Okay, listen. You want to know why Brooke Henderson never reached number one in women's golf? Well, I hear you thinking. Was she never the world's number one during her career? Yep, that's right. Despite her impressive list of victories and her breaking record as the youngest player to win an LPGA major, curiously, she has never been able to take it. She was so incredibly good at a very young age, making a name for herself on the LPGA Tour and winning everything there was to win. But at a certain point, something changed. Why? What happened? If you listen closely, you can already notice something in her early years. Brooke Henderson was born on September 10, 1997, in Smiths Falls, Ontario, Canada. Golf was in her blood from an early age, as both her father Dave and her older sister Brittany, who is also a professional golfer, instilled in her a love for the sport. Brooke began playing golf at the Rideau Lakes Golf and Country Club, and she soon showed extraordinary talent. You know how it goes? She was a natural talent, a young star in the making. But sometimes those high expectations can be tough to handle. At just 16, still an amateur, she was already showing big potential. Could she live up to the hype, or would it all get too much for her? Well, in 2013, she showed us she was up for it all. That year, she won the Canadian Women's Amateur Championship, and the following year, she finished as the runner-up in the U.S. Women's Amateur Championship. Additionally, she won 3 events on the CN Canadian Women's Tour and finished tied for 10th in the U.S. Women's Open, all before even turning professional. And she didn't pause for a moment. In December 2014, Brooke decided to turn pro, giving up the opportunity to play college golf at the University of Florida. Some questioned this decision, but others cheered her on. In the end, time proved the latter right. In her first pro season in 2015, Brooke set a tournament record at the Swinging Skirts LPGA Classic, finishing third, just 1 stroke behind the winner, Lydia Ko. Later, she won her first pro event, the 4 Winds Invitational on the Symetra Tour. And after qualifying for the Cambia Portland Classic, she dominated the field, becoming the second Monday qualifier to win on the tour, and the first Canadian to do so since 2001. But Brooke's big breakthrough came in 2016 when, at 18, she won the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, becoming the youngest to win that major and the second youngest to win any women's major. That victory propelled her to the 2nd spot in the world rankings, proving she was more than ready to contend for the number 1 spot. But that didn't happen. Later, the 2022 Evian Championship was undoubtedly one of the highlights of Brooke Henderson's career to date. The Canadian arrived in Evian-les-Bains, France, with the firm intention of winning her 2nd major and cementing her name in the history of women's golf. Instead, she gave us a spectacular performance. Brooke Henderson entered the tournament with immense confidence after winning the ShopRite LPGA Classic a few weeks prior, and that confidence was reflected in her early rounds, where Brooke shot 2 spectacular 64s, something never before seen in the history of women's majors. This victory not only marked Brooke Henderson's 2nd major win, but also made her the first Canadian golfer to win multiple titles of this caliber. What's more, by winning, Brooke Henderson extended her lead as the most successful Canadian golfer with victories on the LPGA Tour, reaching 12 wins. Before her, only 2 other Canadian players, Mike Weir and Sandra Post, had achieved this milestone. Additionally, her $1 million prize made her the 24th player in the circuit's history to surpass the $10 million mark in earnings. Without a doubt, the 2022 Evian Championship will be remembered as one of the most memorable moments of this Canadian star's career, a triumph that cemented her as one of the most successful golfers of her generation and brought her closer than ever to the coveted top spot in the world rankings. However, unfortunately, this wasn't enough. Not even when, the following year, Henderson won the 2023 Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions at Lake Nona Golf and Country Club in Orlando, completing the 4 rounds in the lead and securing her 13th victory on the LPGA Tour. It's surprising and even somewhat frustrating that a golfer like her, with such an impressive track record, hasn't managed to reach the top of women's golf worldwide. Because, let's face it, how is it possible that someone with 13 victories on the LPGA Tour, being the Canadian golfer with the most wins on the professional circuit, hasn't been able to reach number 1 in the rankings? Well, This is where the tough competition Brooke has faced in what we could call the golden era of women's golf comes in. We're talking about top players like Lydia Ko, Nelly Korda, Arya Jutenugarn, Inbee Park, and others. They've been at the top of their game for years. And if there's one opponent that's been really hard for Brooke to beat, it's So-Yeon Ryu. She was number 1 in 2017 and has stayed near the top with her consistent play and ability to win big matches. She's been a real challenge for Henderson on her way to the top. But let's not forget, Brooke has a strong record to back her up. The thing is, maybe Brooke hasn't been consistent enough in the big tournaments, the majors. While others have won more of those important events, she's had some good and bad times in them. And to become number 1, Brooke might have needed 1 or 2 really big wins against tough competition. A win like that could have given her the final push she needed. Maybe it was the pressure and all the attention that came with being a young rising star. Remember, Brooke was only 18 when she won her first major. And always being compared to Lydia Ko, who became world number 1 even younger, might have been a lot for her to handle. That pressure might have worked against her at key moments. And when your mind is stressed, it affects how the rest of your body moves. Injuries are always a worry for any pro athlete, and Brooke's no different. She had a recent upper back injury that made her pull out of the Pelican Women's Championship, and it couldn't have happened at a worse time. When you're competing at the top level, even a small injury can mess up your game. But besides this one, Brooke might have had other pains or physical issues over her career that held her back in important moments. The tough LPGA Tour schedule takes a toll on players' bodies over time. Remember, Brooke started her pro career young, so maybe her body wasn't fully ready for the demands of elite golf. And even though she's won a lot and been pretty consistent with top 10 finishes in 2022, she hasn't done better than 11th since winning in January. Do the real number 1s have such long stretches without top results? I'm not so sure. So we can't help but wonder, is there something else we're missing here? Let's be honest. If there's a small doubt about why she hasn't reached the number 1 spot in the world, it's precisely that. Maybe she hasn't been quite good enough to take that extra little step needed to reign at the top. It's not like she's been playing terribly, though. She admits to herself that her level has been kind of average lately. Nothing special, but when you're up against the best, being just okay won't get you far. And Brooke has said some things about not being hungry for wins and being happy with decent results. Sounds like she might be lacking a bit of hunger, don't you think? The real number 1s always want more. They're never satisfied. Because, let's be honest, staying on top is really tough. A tough routine, as Brooke herself puts it. In my opinion, she just hasn't had the consistency or killer mindset needed to stay there for good. Honestly, with her talent, nobody doubts that Brooke Henderson could have been the best. But for some reason, she might have missed that extra push that true legends have. Maybe she simply hasn't been good enough to make that leap. It's a shame for a player of her caliber, really. But here's another possibility. What if Brooke Henderson is actually underrated? Why could that be? One idea is that since she hasn't reached that number 1 spot in the rankings, some people don't see her with the same admiration. It's like that final little step has kept her from getting the ultimate respect. That would be really unfair, because even without being number 1, Brooke's numbers and wins put her among the absolute best in her sport. She's the kind of player they'll talk about in the history books. Maybe her quiet and humble personality has played a role too. Brooke isn't one to make a big fuss or make controversial statements. In a sports world where big personalities dominate, her quieter approach might have kept her from getting more media attention. Or perhaps she just lacked that bit of luck that can make all the difference in golf. Like we said, maybe it was just how things were meant to be. Brooke has always been among the best in the world, but in those crucial moments, she couldn't quite push through to claim the top spot. Still, Brooke continues to keep the question alive. Will she finally reach the world number 1 spot in her coming years? One day, we will find out. Fortunately, one thing is for sure. Whatever happens, this young Canadian star will keep fascinating fans and golf lovers around the world. And if you're one of them, what are you waiting for to subscribe to our channel? We're waiting for you here. Meanwhile, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be one of the first to know when there's a new video. Until next time.